Welcome back. We're doing something a bit different today. I'm going to do a studio vlog, and the reason I don't normally do these is because this is my view a good portion of the time. I'm sitting at my desk, writing, I have a cat on my lap, and I have 1 or 2 dogs hanging out in the room. The only one missing is Minnie. Anyways, let's head to the studio where I am starting off by firstly organizing my desk. It's kind of a mess because I've been testing out some new camera equipment. I recently had some difficulties with my primary camera, discovering that it's kind of obsolete. It's not that old, but I can't find name brand batteries anymore, and the batteries I had kind of futzed out on me, so I got some off-brand batteries, and they work pretty well, but that was a bit of a warning call to tell me to have an alternate. So I went out and I got a relatively affordable GoPro, and now I'm just messing around with battery packs and mounting it and figuring out how to actually get everything to line up properly and to be mounted to the rig and everything, and just making sure that it all works. It's a fairly functional camera. It's mostly used for, cinematic action shots, so this is mostly going to be a stationary setup, which takes a bit of actual adjustment, but even so, I think I'm figuring it out, and frankly, cameras are so not my area of expertise. I prefer drawing pictures and reading books, but one does what one must. My main plan for the day was to actually work on some bookmarks, and I have product pictures to take and some organizing that needs to be done before I can make anything reasonably functional. So I need to get this camera stuff sorted out and put away and working for the future, charged up and all that sort of nonsense, and we'll go from there. Alright, everything's getting there. The mount is a bit wobbly, but I'll figure that out, and now I just have to put my stained glass patterns away. That is a project for another time. So I've got some leather here. These are prototypes that I did a while back, trying out different methods of engraving leather with my Cricut and figuring out what works and what doesn't, what sort of leather I can use, what I can't use. I am very new to the leather crafting world. I have done leather sewing on the sewing machine, but my industrial sewing machine can go through just about anything, so I've never really had to worry about different leather weights and leather finishes and that sort of a thing. So as you can see, I have a few that turned out better than others. Only one that I have successfully foiled, so that's gonna have to wait till another day. But I have a bunch of prototypes that I've done that are okay, depending on the leather weight, the finish, that sort of a thing, and I'm figuring things out, but I'd really love to get some of these bookmarks going. So what I'm doing is preparing blanks, just rough cutting out some leather, getting it all together so that I can have a bunch of different options, putting things together. The trick is to stick it to transfer tape, Cricut transfer tape, before sticking it to the mat. This is on the back of the leather because the skin side of the leather the inside of the leather is fairly fuzzy most of the time. At least the stuff I get from my local leather store is, and so you don't want that sticking to your Cricut mat. It makes a huge mess, it makes it less sticky, and then you have to buy a new one or clean it off very thoroughly, which is sometimes difficult. So sticking it to the transfer tape first and then putting it on, that works best. And now I have a lot of this blue stuff. I've discovered that it is a little thick for my Cricut machine, so I don't end up having more than one successful attempt with it. But this green stuff, which I used to bind my Foundation Trilogy book, it actually works great with the Cricut machine. I really should try it with some foiling, see how that goes. I have a bunch of it. So I have many other projects I need to do, though, besides bookmarks, But I've collected leather scraps over the years, don't ask me why when I haven't really done a whole lot of leather crafting. I've wanted to do leather crafting, which is why I kept gathering supplies, but I haven't actually gotten to it yet. One of the things I want to do is figuring out how to carve leather so that I can carve into the leather that my Cricut machine can't. I guess a lot of the things that I do are trying to figure out what machines can and can't do so I can do the rest. I do know that I have a lot more scraps than I will ever need, so I'm gonna have to sort through these and make a bunch of bookmark blanks and some other projects, keychains and other things, so on and so forth. But might as well get started with just some bookmarks. Now, these are bookmarks that I tend to send out with orders from my website, which is to say people who buy books from me, they get a bookmark. Will this make sense in the long term, depending on the volume of orders I get? Perhaps not. But for now, I'm trying things out, and I'm messing around and seeing what works and what doesn't so that I can, well, learn stuff, feels important, and then use that knowledge to go from there. Anyways, the Cricut going, this is at 3 times speed. It's not a super fast machine, but it works pretty well, I would have to say. A little finicky, but it works. And it's kind of fun to watch too. Alright, while the Cricut is doing its thing, I have another task that needs getting done. It's been on my list for a while, and that is to organize my craft drawers. As you can see, I have papers and bookbinding supplies and some other... These are old artworks that I've done, and they don't really fit in my craft supply drawer, but I don't really didn't have a better place to put them until I got these. Hello, Minnie. Coming to help? And that would be a no. Minnie doesn't help. So I got these bins from a family member. They had little dividers in there, but they used them for another organizing task. So I got the bins, which is perfect size for some of my old artwork so that I can get it out of my supply drawers and put it away. Sorting through that, there's just an empty container there. Always useful. It's painter's tape. Use this all the time for watercolors and bookbinding and who knows what else. Acrylic block for stamps, some sandpaper, which is surprisingly more useful than you'd think. And now we're getting into the old art. These first two, the ones with the musicians, I did years ago. And the bottom one I did with some paint pens. I was testing them out for the very first time. I didn't like it so much on the canvas board, but I liked the final product. Got some empty bag. I have a whole bunch of these that I collect. And a glasses container or a pen container. It must be for pens. It's too small for glasses. Oh, this tile I did when I was, 6 or 7. They were trying to get us to do a portrait in the style of Picasso, and this was a time when you would order the mugs and the tiles and the pillowcases and whatnot. So I have all sorts of these, and everyone thought it was, oh, that's really cool, that's really great, I love the Picasso portrait thing. I don't like Picasso. I never have. So everyone in my family was like, ooh, wow, that's really good, and I was like, yeah, I hate it. Moving on to some copper etchings. I think I still have the supplies for copper etching, but I haven't done it in years, so I don't know. Some old drawings from high school and college and first iterations of book cover for Crow and the King. Ooh, just doodles and things. These were from some larger sketchbooks that don't really fit anywhere else. I don't really love large sketchbooks, so I pulled these out and just saved the individual pages and then turned the sketchbooks into notebooks for bookbinding, which is really fun. Oh, yeah. The poor owl has to vacuum up after the cat. That feels like the definition of my life. Anyways, I'm just have a few of these pieces that are too big to fit in sketchbooks or other places where I have art stored, so they get to go in the box. This is another one where I pulled out most of the paper because it's just, I don't like the big pages. I used it for a few things, but mostly I'm a small sketchbook sort of person. So the big pictures, the big paper, there's just so much empty space. Although I did do a few full color marker illustrations, which was kind of fun. The tiny sketchbook. I have a pile of other sketchbooks, but this one is so small I don't want to lose it, so I'm just going to stick it in the box too. I did this last year, I think, October through December, I want to say. I really should get more of these. I loved the little square sketchbook. It was so much fun. Alright, I believe that's everything that I've got in those drawers, so that's just going to get packed up and put away. And now I get to reorganize the drawers themselves. Ooh, gravity. Anyways, so I've got mostly empty drawer. I'll reshuffle things around later. I've got a light switch that I need to paint because the light switches are boring when they're only one color. So I'm just putting the things that are useful that I still use in here. I think I'm going to keep everything else in the bookbinding drawer and in my bullet journaling papers and stickers and whatnot drawer. Keep everything but the stamp pad and the ink there. I'll move those up, and I'll probably shuffle things around at a later date when I have a bit more energy for tidying. And of course keeping the containers because they're always useful for something. Paintbrushes, if nothing else. And yes, that is a sanding block. It's for stained glass. The bottom drawers are just paints and whatnot. And then there's Minnie, not helping some more. And Willow, supervising the not helping some more. Alright, so the Cricut has done its work. I can cut out my bits of leather that I have carved, engraved, debossed. I'm not sure what the proper term would be. Technically I'm using the deboss setting plus the foil transfer setting without actually doing foil, just to get the details a bit more in place. But I think it turned out pretty nicely. As you can see, this blue leather is fairly thick. It doesn't show up very well. While the Cricut is cutting out other types of leather and other bookmarks, I have some product pictures I need to take. These are book plates that are going to go on my website for people who are international, who can buy just the book plate in an envelope and then have that sent to them from me with a personalized message or just a signature. Alright, this is the last bookmark. I tried about 10 different styles of leather and different designs and whatnot, and I ended up with a few that I like. I'm gonna have to figure out the proper weights and things. As you can see, this one, which should be the proper weight because it's got a different finish, the engraving, it shows up in person, but almost not at all on camera, which is frustrating. So that one's gonna just have to go to the discard pile. But I ended up with a fair few. I really like the brown dragon. If I could find more of that, I think I've got more of that. I might even have a partial hide, if I'm not mistaken. And then the green feather, I think, turned out really well. The blue one, you can see it really well in person, not so much on camera. But I think it's a decent start to send out with orders from people. Bit chaotic here in the studio. I've got too many things going on and I just am glad to get a few of them done.